Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Today we will discuss the importance and the fundamentals of adult learning. Chapter relates with the if you people remember, we discussed already discussed the portion of the learning and how this learning relate with the human resource development and how learning play a role in the human resource development. So, first, I would like to give you a brief introduction and the brief background related with the learning. And that if you know that we are all learning all the time, from day to day, and even from minutes to minute, and then we can find ourselves faced with the need to adapt in order to survive in different circumstances. We adapt our behavior uh, and in our behavior and our ways of thinking about the world and interacting with it in in order to cope and continue to live. For most of the time, you people observe that for the changes required of us are small and hardly noticed. At the other extreme, uh, if we if we notice it, there are occasions when we have to make major changes very quickly. In between are those occasions we realize that we have changes, or we can say that changed, adopted, and now behave differently, or see the world differently. So with this, we can say that learning is difficult to define. We can say that it's a part of the process of change, number one thing, and then adaptations to different circumstances. It enables us to draw on the past in order to cope better with the future. It is do with the change, you can say that. So what kind of a change we needed, what kind of the learning curves we needed, it's totally depend or through linked with the learning people may change their view of the world, or their understanding of themselves, or their behavior, or something else, you can say. The change may not always be immediately obvious to others, or even to the learner, sorry. So this is how we can say that the main linked, we can say that it's a main perspective related with the learning, and the learning is a process, you can say that, and it's change with the passage of time. And you can say that we are all in the learning stage, or in the learning state all the time. So this is not, you can say that is not a one event, you can say that, but you can say that a series of elements that go to make up learning. So this is a more appropriate, we can say that. Then when you explaining the learning, when you explaining or when you're talking about learning, so there is a formal learning and informal learning. This is very important that you first understand the differentiate between a formal learning and informal learning. Formal learning is learning that take place in a structured and intentional way. Typically, formal learning takes place when we attend some kind of course, uh, often in a particular setting. A good example of a formal learning is the learning that takes place in school, classrooms, or training rooms. An informal learning in other way is a non-structured, is not structured, sorry. And as well as you can say that with examples, if you refer it to the example, is that all that learning which is not related with your proper classroom settings. Other than the classroom settings, all those learnings other than the classroom settings is known as the informal learning. And which we discover a new piece of information through a casual conversation. So with casual information and with casual conversation, you can learn a lot of informal learning. So started with the first slides that is already discussed in my introductory part, that learning is difficult to define, what kind of a change relates with the learning. What has been said so far implies that learning is a process that is not one event but a series of elements. So I already discussed it and I already explain it to you people, that is work with the in these kind of the circumstances. So the other aspects related with the learning is that it is useful at this point to make distinctive uh, work and the distinctive explanation uh, between formal and informal learning. And the formal learning is the that learning that takes place in the classroom, and informal is learning is that without related with the other aspects and the others issues. So moving further to the learning process is the process of learning can usefully be split into several stages. To learn, we must receive new information or data, takes the information in and assimilate the information, store the information, use the information, and you can say that we can go through with these all aspects. Then receiving, by receiving we means that information comes in many forms. Our senses offer us information all the time. We filter the information, selecting what is relevant at the moment, that is what is significant for the task in hand. Sometimes we make mistakes and ignore something important. Sometimes one piece of information is so overpowering that it bolts over everything else. Thus, when my sense of touch tells me that I am very cold, this information can bold out everything else, including the words of wisdom of a teacher. So these are the receptors, you can say that these are the basically you are receiving the informations. Receiving informations comes in many ways, you can say that. And then you can somewhat find out the informations, and somehow when you are collecting the information, so this is significant for the task in hand, you can say that. And when and as well as we can also make mistakes and the other aspects related with the. So by this thing, that we can say that we are actually receiving information, and by receiving information we are responding to a particular situation, and we are particularly related with the different situations and different aspects which is related with the informations. So by other means we can say that what does the mean of that, the wisdom of the teacher, and this is cannot be the bold out everything else including the words of the wisdom. And thus you can say that the mean is that whatever you are receiving it, and whatever the circumstances is related with the, they can affect the learning process, and they can ultimately affect your learning process in the in organization, and you can say that in a you in your journal learning as well. Taking in is having received information and selected what we wish to notice of, and we have to take the information in. How do we how we do this is not very well understood, but it is clear that human beings vary considerably in their ability to take in information. There are great variations in what we can see, hear, feel, and so on. Many of these variations have to do with physical capability and are affected by the circumstances. For example, I see less well in a dim light. I hear less distantly if there is a lot of background noise. Our physical capabilities also change with age. Most people notice a deterioration in their sight and hearing as they grow older, though the speed of change varies enormously. So these are some of the things, these are some of the aspects which is varying with the situations, with the passage of time, and as well as with the other circumstances and other situations as well. These are some of the repetitions, but I'm discussing in a bit. You can say that in a more brief, and I go for my more further slides to discuss it with details in you for going with this adult learning and how this adult learning has an important role in organization, and how this why this adult learning and why we are discussing this chapter. Moving further and discuss these things in a briefly, and moving further, so we will discuss more in details about the adult learning and adulthood, and how these adult learning is importance, and why we are discussing these things. So this is very important things. Then assimilating is, in order to learn something, we must connect what we have taken in through our senses with information we already have stored away. This help us first to make sense of the informations we have received, until we can connect the new information in some way with our existing framework of thought and experience. We cannot decide whether the information is significant are worth retaining. How the process of assimilating work is again not well understood, but the details do not matter for our present purposes. What is important is the role played by existing frameworks of thought. The more easily we can assimilate informations to our existing frameworks, the quicker and more efficient will be our learning. If we further explain the word assimilate information, so assimilate information is the thing is that take into the mind and thoroughly understand. The thing is that the new concepts, you can say that, and how you nourish and utilize the new concepts is basically related with the assimilating information. Then by assimilating, here I can add more thing with the assimilating, is that is related with the cultural assimilating. What is the meaning of the cultural assimilation, you can say that? The cultural assimilation is the process in which minority group or culture comes to resembles a society's majority group, or assume the values, behaviors, and beliefs of an another group. So this is, you can say that, links with the assimilating word. So moving further to over another slide, and that is related with this assimilating. Uh, hence, those offering learning must find ways of helping learners to connect new information to old. This is partially partly expressed in the idea familiar to trainers and teachers that you must start where the students are. With adults, starting where they are can be very difficult. In any group of adults, there is a variety of experience and a variety of starting points. Even when their group is coming to a task unfamiliar to all of them, the frameworks into which the new information must be assimilating are very varied. Then next step is storing. Once information has been assimilated, it must be stored for reuse. For as in the previous part, I already explained you the meaning of the assimilate. That assimilate is that you get the information, you find out the information, that you can adopt the language. You can say that you adopt the culture of a dominant social group, and then how you are, you can say that, the state of the being socially, you can say that, integrated into the culture of the dominant group in a society. So this all related with it. Then if we are to be able to say we have learned it, the processes of memory have been closely studied for many years, but are still a subject of considerable debate and research. For example, you can see the study of the Shanks 1997, and then you can go it on that how can they debate it and how they explain it, the importance of this storing part of the learning process. Another important thing is that if you remember it and if you can think about it, that one thing is that is often said about that the memory declines as you grow older. And then you can say that a considerable debate and research is already available on the research perspectives, and you can go through and you can find out. However, it is not generally agreed that we store things in short or long term memory. At least many of the items stored in short term memory will be lost after a period of time, or after a certain period of time, or after minutes of, sometimes of the minutes, sometimes of the days. Information stored in a long term memory may be there indefinitely, though we may also have difficulty assessing it. You people know that you whatever you learned in the matric examinations, there's so many people who top the A level exams, or who top the matric examinations in Pakistan, or in other European countries, or in other areas of the world. But without memorize it again and again, or recall it again and again, they ultimately forgot the informations. If the some information is not being the part of your life, if the information is now being the part of your life, so you can store that information again and again in your mind, and then again and again you practice that information in your life, so that information is retained in your life, or retained for a longer period of time. Then moving further, using, we cannot say we have learned something until we are able to use it, and usually we use it in context different from the context in which we gained it. This implies that we cannot claim to have learned something until we have tried to use it. So learning opportunities should carry with them the opportunity to use what has been learned. This may be as simple as trying to show someone else a skill you have acquired, or explaining to someone else a new idea you have learned about it. So, this is related with the using perspective of the learning process. For more explanations, if we can say that the using is, you can say that part is a provider of a learning. This stage of learning is relevant to assessing learning in order to know whether students have learned and why they have learned. We need some form of evaluation. The nature and form of the evaluation or assessment will vary according to what is supposed to be learned. And for good assessment, it is necessary that learners are given the opportunity to show that they can use the information they have gained in different ways. For example, in assessing whether or not someone has learned to use a word processor, we might need to ask them to produce more than a one document to show that they have learned the skills, rather than just a piece or just a recipe. So this is how we can say that, and this is how we can explain these things. Another important part of the lecture is that related with the levels of competence. Learning takes time. That is important to notice that stages we have described take time. We may receive, take in, and partially assimilate information in a very short period, but it may take hours or days for us to assimilate the information completely. In some of the cases, in some of the situation, your understanding is incomplete for a certain period of time, but it takes time, or it takes days as well to assimilate the informations completely. So the learning opportunities must provide time for the necessary reflections to take place. For instance, we can say that sometimes we have no ability to understand the learning. We have less informations available. You can say that your knowledge and skills, we can say that is not obvious, it's not obviously related with your conscious mindset to which replicate, or which basically instantly explain the informations, you can say that. So These are the might of the reasons, these are might of the issues. For example, you can say that when we are driving a car, but we have to think about what we are doing. So with the unconscious competence, you can say that, and which is where we might be thinking about work as we drive home, and we can't even remember doing the driving nor the journey home. These levels of competence is one of the issues, you can say that. So when you are discussing it, so this means that you are talking about unconscious competence, you're talking about conscious competence, you're talking about conscious incompetence, and conscious incompetence. So these are some of the different issues that you can say that you have a limited information. As earlier I told you, as earlier we discussed it, you have a limited information, you have a limited informations for assimilating the information. So at that time you are consciously competent, but you not understand the things that how can we relate it, how can we link it, how can we link the informations to the certain things, and then how can we practically use it. Is the thing is that you can the thing is that the person in a previous decade, in a previous time, is not observe it, and they cannot even think about it, that at the time of the at the era, and at some certain, after a certain period of time, there will be the opportunity that people can move their cell phones from one place to another place, and they can talk to their near ones, to their loved ones from any part of the country or any part of the world. So previous decade people cannot imagine these things, or if they have the kind of the information that can be but that can be practically are implemented in the 21st century, you can say that. And there's so many other things that which we previously only listen about in the books, or we have only informations in our spiritual or religious books, but now we are seeing that in a practically. So this is the kind of things you can say that are consciously or unconsciously competence relates, and how can we relate these things in organization. Then moving further to the another part is learning is an iterative process. What does the meaning of the iterative process is, that why we are talking about the learning is an iterative process. Iterative is basically is a learning process, or you can say that is simply a series of steps that you repeat, and then you receive the things, and then you taking in and improving your product with each cycle, you can say that. So learning is that you can be the iterative, is that again and again you can, and it's a very incremental kind of the stage, or the incremental part of the people, you can say that. Because learning is not abruptly. So if this is not abruptly, that it means that learning is incremental and slow process, and it takes time for the development of the people and for the individuals to manifested in between this the thing is that the relationship between occur and the information that they are receiving from the from the different part of their world, or for the different part of their life, you can say that. Our interaction may be with other people, with objects, with the other aspects of the life, you can say that. You can say that we acknowledge, and we can say that we can things receive information again and again, so you can say that these are the other aspects. Then in this manner, Kolb's cycle is very much simplified this process. If you have the books, I already shared the book with you, and if you don't have, still you don't have the book, so please tell me, so I can share with you with any platform. I can provide you through the emails, and I can provide you as well as with the uh, with my the WhatsApp and so many other things. The thing is very important. Okay, I will observe that how many people of you listened my lectures very seriously, and they come up with this stage and they can figure out the point that where I mentioned about the importance of book, and I can mention this that the book, if you can go with you, if you can find out your chapter, the fundamentals of learning, adult learning, sorry, so you can find out the Kolb cycle on page number 191. Kolb cycle is basically, number one is that experiencing, number two is interpreting, number three is generalizing, and then number four is testing. So this is a cyclic process. This is a cyclic process that can go with the experiencing. First, an individual is going for the experiencing, then with after experiencing the things, and then individuals can interpret the things, then individuals can generalize the things, and testing the things in their practical life or in their lives, you can say that. Just a little thought about our own learning should show that we need to also take account of choices, deliberate decisions to accept or reject particular ways of reflecting goals and so on. However, the simple picture is sufficient for our so with this, I think you can understand the learning, and then the what does the meaning of the iterative, and that I explain you that iterative means that simply a series of a learning, you can say that, and this is an ongoing process. Then the another important issue and the another important point is adults and adulthood. Having looked very briefly at the process of learning, we turn to the second part of our task and consider adults and adulthood. Much of our thinking about learning is based on the studies of children learning. And however, there are significant differences between children and adults, and some of the differences affect learning. This is very important point. This is the basic crux why I choose this area and why I'm discussing with you uh, for the course of this human resource development. That what kind of the stages, what kind of the differences, you can say that relate with the children and the adults can affect the overall learning process. So this is emphasized by some writers using the distinction between pedagogy and andragogy. Pedagogy is claimed to be a form of teaching and learning appropriate to children in formal settings, which sees them as recipients of instruction. Andragogy, in contrast, is seen as a process of teaching and learning in which the learners are participants. And uh, so this is how you can differentiate between a pedagogy and andragogy. Andragogy, you can say that. uh, the one another thing is that relates with the andragogy is, we cannot go further in the detail of the andragogy, but I can give you a brief idea about the andragogy. Is Andragogy is based on the five assumptions of the novels that one of the author in the 1980s, that the number one point is that is related with the self concept. And that self concept is means that a person matures, his or her self concept moves from one of a being a dependent personality toward one of being a self directed human being. This is number one point. And the another part is the related with the adult learning experience. A person's mature, he and she accumulates a growing reservoir of experience that becomes an increasing resource for learning. Then the third part is readiness to learn. As a person mature, his or her readiness to learn becomes oriented increasingly to the developmental task of his or her social roles. Then The fourth part related with the andragogy is related with the orientations to the learning, and a person's mature his or her time perspective changes from one of the postponed application of knowledge to the the immediacy of the application. As a result of his or her orientation toward learning shifts from one subject centeredness to one of a problem centeredness. So and the last part is that the motivations to learn, a person's matures, the motivations to learn is internal. So this is very matters a lot, that how much. And these are the some of the things which I would like to explain and which I would like to share with you, that the motivations to learn is very, very, very important in the organizations. When you're talking about a successful organization, and when we're talking about the that when we are discussing the behavioral aspects or the attitudinal aspects of the individuals in the organization, this one single word, that motivations to learn, play a lot to the organization, that how much an individual matures the motivation to learn these things internally is can replicate or can contributed, or which relate with the aspects of the productivity of the organization, which relate with the usefulness of the organization, you can say that. So this is what basically the meanings of that we are talking about today is about, related with the adults, and how that adults learning play a significant role in the organization's success. Then other thing is that, what is an adult? There are many ways in which we normally pick out adults from children. For example, age, size, or occupation. Thus we can usually say that someone aged 14 is not an adult, someone aged 41 is an adult. Now, this based on that the circumstances, this based on the situation, this based on the need of the some of the perspectives. Someone 6 feet tall is likely to be an adult, someone 3 feet tall is likely to be a child, someone in full time employment is likely to be an adult, someone in full time compulsory schooling is more likely to be a child. So these are the different examples, these are the different narrations related with the aspects. And then adults needs to be involved in the some of the instructions of the evaluations and some of the planning experience related with including the mistakes as well, provide the basis of the learning activities. Adults are most interested in learning subjects that have immediate relevance and impact to their job or their personal life. Adult learning is a problem oriented or a problem centered rather than the content oriented, you can say that. So these are the further explanations related with the adults aspects, and they related with the adults part of the learnings, you can say that. Then moving further is the styles of the adult learning is why people want to learn. Usually adult learners will have a mixture of reasons for wanting to learn, uh, and their reasons may change over the course of a learning program. We can never assume that we know exactly why people have opted to become adult uh, learners. However, it is useful to group the main reasons for learning in ways that relate to the main psychological theories about learning. We will further discuss about the theories part of the for this chapter as well. We do not have space for detailed discussion of these theories, especially as there are many variants within each of the mainstreams, but we can discuss some of the theories which is related with the with this part of the course, or with this part of the lectures, or with this part of the chapter as well. As then number one is the behaviorist theories of learning. Some of our learnings comes about as a response to a stimulus. We react to something outside ourselves. If the result is good for us, we learn to react in similar fashion in a similar situation. While if the result is bad, we learn not to do that again. This is the basic idea of the behaviorist school of thought, which can be traced back to the work of the Paulwell 1927 studies, who taught dogs to salivate at the sound of a bell and snicker. That you, if you remember it, that they can relate dogs to the food, and they relate the whole process with the bell. Whenever the bell rang, the dogs salivate and respond to a particular stimuli with the need as well, you can say that. Who taught pigeons to play table tennis through operant conditioning. These are, but this is not the basic things, the basics I think is not concern for this. We could go for these things as you already go, and you have the idea about the operant conditioning and the Paulwell studies, as well as if you have still any ambiguity, and if you want to discuss with me, so you can ask questions from me, so we can furtherly, I can furtherly elaborate with you. So far, not a single student can ask a single questions from me and from my recordings that, sir, we not understand your this part of the slides and this part of the recording. I hope someone can ask anything related with my lectures. um, uh, I know that this is the pandemic situation is one of the tough, but most of the students is not listening the videos and audios quite from the start to the end, and they listen out the whole video. So let's see. If you have the questions, you can ask from me, so we can discuss it in a more good manner, and I will be also be motivated. You can ask questions from me. Behaviors concentrate on modifying behavior by reinforcement. Reinforcement is, what does the mean of the reinforcement? Is a reinforcement is a positive reinforcement reinforcer and a negative reinforcer as well as. Oh, for positive reinforcer is that you can give the reward, like you can say that your car insurance is reduced if you do not make a claim, while unwanted behavior is treated to negative reinforcement. You are fined if you are caught speeding. Then the other part of the lecture is related with the other part of the lecture is related with the cognitivist theories of learning. If some of our learning is reactive, some learning can also be described as a proactive, that is, we seek out information and try to make sense of it in order to understand better our world and our place in it. This is the basics of the cognitivist theories of learning, which make use of the work of researchers such as Colrell and Piaget. Colrell worked with apps and the Piaget, Piaget concentrated on child development, but their results have been applied uh, more widely for the cognitivist. The key feature of human beings for learning is that we are intelligent seekers. According to cognitivist theories, we constantly find that our experience of the world does not quite fit the way we see the world, and we try to do something about the misfit. We seek new information, we adjust our view of the world, we may create a new way of seeing the world. There are clear connections here with some of the elements we noted earlier in the different stages of the learning process. And then other thing is that uh, claim that the Piaget is claims that sometimes we reject change. He developed a threefold classification of responses to the information, suggesting that we assimilate, accommodate, and reject the kind of the information. The new information poses no great challenge to our existing frameworks of thought and is observed. Accommodate, the new information does not fit easily into the existing frameworks that can be taken within. Some of the changes rejecting the new information is so different from anything we have already that we cannot take it without changes in our framework of thinking, and we are not willing to make the changes. The last part of this one part of the slides is the humanist theories of learning. They are responding to the stimulus, which may be the need to upgrade skills in order to keep a job, because they want to improve the fit between the perception of the world and their experience, because they are encouraged to develop their potential. left compulsory education as the first opportunity. They realized that they are capable of learning a great deal more. The humanist theories of learning is more related with the human perspective, and how importantly that how the experiences matters, and how these experiences can work, can help to understand the organization better and career progress. And these things can encourage the potential of the individuals and increase the competency of the individuals in the organizations, and can ultimately work and can ultimately linked with the, if we talking about, if we can talking about the other part, and if we relate it with the attitudinal and the behavioral part of the individuals, you can say that. So this humanist theories can work a lot. But if you can go through the literature, and if you can study more about the other theories that is related with the cognitivist and then the behaviorist theories, so behaviorist and the cognitive theories is also works a lot, and they can also work in the modifying the behavior, that you can say that this is a very famous process, the reinforcement, and this is also a very famous part of the operant conditioning. And then later for the move, the cognitivist is that what you learn about of the whole process, about the whole child development process, and how this child development process can work in your learning, and how these works with the organization. So this concludes the first part of the lecture. I will record the other part and this share with you as well as. So if you have any questions, if you want to ask anything with the subjects contents, with the confusions related with the learning outcomes, if you have any kind of the questions, please ask, so I can welcome and I can be really happy to answer your questions as well. Thank you very much, and have a good day as well.